All right, hello everybody. Welcome in. We have a very interesting development today. I think it is notable, and we have to credit our friend Brad Graham over at the SF Niners. That's the handle of all of his social media, the Twitter account, the YouTube, the Instagram. He does a great job. And there's a quote from Brandon Aiyuk here via the Aiyuk Daily, which is a new account that just opened up today. But Brad actually confirmed that this quote did come from Brandon Aiyuk. And it reads as such: "My home is here. My family is here. Everything I know is here. I want to be a 49er beyond this season." End quote. So, those of you who haven't been following this closely day to day, I don't blame you. It's the off season. Some of you don't like to sit on the roller coaster of drama. But to give you a brief synopsis, earlier in the off season, Brandon Aiyuk came on Chad Ochocinco's podcast and expressed his desire for this deal to be done with the 49ers. He wanted to play for the 49ers. He clearly said that on the podcast. He even mentioned that he had recently been in the facility. You then had another player, I forgot exactly who it was, but there was another player that said that he had seen Brandon Aiyuk at the facility. So I'm guessing that he was coming in for some workouts, some treatment over the course of the offseason. But shortly after that period of time, when we had heard of Brandon Aiyuk being at the facility, and when he said that he wanted a deal done with the 49ers, shortly after that, we went to essential radio silence, especially on the front of Brandon Aiyuk saying that he wanted to re-sign with the 49ers. We saw him post some of his workouts away from the facility. We had some cryptic messages, right? But he didn't overtly say, I want this deal to be done, for quite a long time, several weeks, maybe a couple months. I don't know. I'm not keeping exact track. Up until now, today, through the Aiyuk Daily, which one of our subscribers, I think it was Being Butterfly, did some investigating and noticed that the Aiyuk Daily account was created today and only has 2 posts, or only had 2 posts at the time that this was posted. And then Brad Graham of the SF Niners verified, and we trust Brad, he did a good job verifying this, verified that Brandon Aiyuk is indeed behind this quote. So, and the quote again is, I want to be a 49er beyond this season. So we had Aiyuk saying this a couple months ago. We had a dry spell of cryptic messages, and then we have this right now. Now, so what's happened? What's caused this arc? Well, we can only speculate at this point, but we do have to remember that the Justin Jefferson inflection point, with Jefferson signing a wildly large deal, was last week. And at the time, I predicted, and I still hold true to this, that was just going to make this harder for Brandon Aiyuk and the 49ers. Just going to make it harder for CeeDee Lamb and the Cowboys, Jamar Chase and the Bengals. Normally, you have deals that build precedent, but then you have deals that are so much bigger than anything before them that they're outliers. And we look at this by fully guaranteed money, right? It's a lot better gauge than APY as to what these players and what these people are looking for. And the previous high water mark for wide receivers in fully guaranteed money before Justin Jefferson signed his deal was $52.5 million of fully guaranteed money to Tyreek Hill from the Miami Dolphins after the trade from the Chiefs. A.J. Brown signed a contract this offseason that got close at $51 million, but didn't quite get there. The other deals, they're all a little bit smaller. You had Calvin Ridley, 47, so that was a little bit closer, but Amon-Ra St. Brown, $34 million. That wasn't close. Jalen Waddle, I think that was $35.9 million. Wasn't particularly close. Then Justin Jefferson came along and absolutely obliterated the high water mark from Tyreek Hill at $88.7 million. Paid no regard to the receiver market. He just shot for Nick Bosa and surpassed Bosa's $88 million. So that was a 70% increase from 52.5 to 88.7 million. So that number was so far out there for Justin Jefferson that my immediate reaction was, well, even though people are saying, oh, this is great for all their wide receivers, I didn't think so in the short term. I thought that teams were going to try to stay closer to the pack, to Tyreek Hill, all the other receivers, than jumping out 70% in front of the previous high going rate. It's kind of like the Deshaun Watson deal a couple years back. Fully guaranteed. We'd never seen anything like it before. At first, everybody was like, oh, this is the new precedent. And then the rest of the league said, it's not the precedent unless we allow it to be the precedent. We're not going to offer fully guaranteed deals to other quarterbacks, no matter who they are. We're not going to follow the Cleveland Browns with this Deshaun Watson deal. So still TBD on what happens with this Justin Jefferson situation. But it is safe to say that the Justin Jefferson inflection point benefited Justin Jefferson. And it might be fair to say that the Justin Jefferson inflection point benefited only Justin Jefferson. Because what it did is you set this number that's way out there for receivers. And the guys who still haven't signed their contracts obviously are going to be interested to see if they could somehow approach that number. And then teams are like, no, we don't want the precedent to go that far. That creates a polarizing rift. If there wasn't already a rift in some of these contract negotiations, it creates frustration, right? Because it's much harder for two sides to be on the same page. Anyway, I have sensed frustration just through the clues that we've outwardly had regarding Brandon Aiyuk and the 49ers. I've sensed, something over the past week since that inflection point obviously hasn't been ideal. TJ Houshmandzadeh, who is Brandon Ayuk's personal wide receivers coach, said that Aiyuk is no longer optimistic that a deal was going to get done. That was a few days ago, and he had been optimistic before. And that all led to this. It all led to today's quote. I want to be a 49er beyond this season. The full thing. My home is here. My family is here. Everything I know is here. I want to be a 49er beyond this season. It all led to this. So we can infer that maybe some of the frustration that happens, some of the fan base even, I feel has been turning on Brandon Aiyuk and saying, you got to be loyal to the team. He has every right to negotiate a contract that is as lucrative as possible for himself and his family. But it just feels that it hasn't all been positive, obviously, over the past few days. And it might be important for Brandon Aiyuk to get some of this messaging out that he does want to stay with the 49ers. Now, the natural next question is, when does this get resolved? Well, this is just a quote. And we've had a similar quote from Brandon Aiyuk already this offseason. Quotes don't resolve contract negotiations. Deadline pressure typically does. So again, I've been saying this over and over. The first inflection point as far as deadline pressure goes is the start of training camp. The 49ers would really like Aiyuk in camp. And I think that Aiyuk has reason to be in training camp with the 49ers having Ricky Pearsall on this roster now. Deebo Samuel, Juwan Jennings re-signed. Christian McCaffrey has signed a new contract. George Kittle's going to be healthy. There's not a whole lot of targets to go around if you're the 49ers. So I think that if you're in a contract year, which Brandon Aiyuk is, you'd want to be part of it as quickly as possible. You also would want to be part of it in an on-contract year, meaning that you've signed your deal. So there's incentive at the start of training camp, not only for Aiyuk to get the training camp, but also to get the training camp with a new contract. Gives you a little bit of assurance entering this new season. Because the 49ers, this is the NFL. You're ready to march forward and move on. You have your contingency plans for everything. And they have a contingency plan for no Aiyuk at this point. I don't know if the 49ers had a viable contingency plan for no Nick Bosa last year. So the deadline pressure, the leverage there might have been more on Bosa's side. And he rode that sucker out all the way until a couple days before the regular season in September. He missed all of training camp, all of preseason. And then he signed his deal. It's the one that Justin Jefferson just broke as the largest non-quarterback deal in NFL history. So Bosa got his $88 million fully guaranteed. Bosa got $35 million per year or $34 million per year. Jefferson won up that. In the case of Brandon Aiyuk, though, I don't think that he's got the same sort of leverage, the same sort of gravitational pull that Nick Bosa had, especially since the 49ers have other contingencies at wide receiver. Do they still want / borderline need him at that position to win a Super Bowl? Yeah, they want to be as good as possible. They want Aiyuk in this building. It's just not as indispensable as Nick Bosa was because of the other contingencies, because he's not Nick Bosa. So I think that the deadline pressure might exert itself in a useful way a little bit sooner than it did in the Bosa situation. But the 49ers, it's their task to get Aiyuk at a good number, at a sustainable number. I've talked so much about what this potential contract might look like. I could put it back up on the screen because I think that it was Mike Silver today who was reporting that the 49ers and Aiyuk, their latest offer is $26 million per year. Now, APY is something that we shouldn't read too far into. Again, it's more about the fully guaranteed money. But when I wrote about 2 months ago about Brandon Ayuk's contract and what it might look like, I pinned this at $25.7 million per year, but with over $50 million in fully guaranteed money. That's the key. How much fully guaranteed money is going to be there? And even if Mike is reporting that they're at 26 million on an offer, is it a loaded 26 million? Is it a short change 26 million? How much fully guaranteed money is there backing that $26 million APY up? And I think that's what's ultimately going to determine whether or not Aiyuk wants to sign on the dotted line sooner rather than later. And deadline pressure will ultimately determine who budges and who budges how much, because we just don't have enough of the picture yet to be certain about where this stands at the moment. But my proposal was 52 million fully guaranteed, which would have been right at Tyreek Hill money, and about 25.7 million per year, because funny money doesn't mean all too much to me. And I don't think it's going to mean all too much to Brandon Aiyuk, but I could be wrong because, again, none of us are sitting in on these negotiations. So at some point, there is a lot of speculation here. But this is coming from Brandon Aiyuk today, from the Aiyuk Daily account form today, verified by Brad Graham. I want to be a 49er beyond this season. At a certain level, you know, I don't want to pretend that this moves it along any further than it's moved along. Deadline pressure is still really necessary for something like this to get done in all likelihood, because that's what's going to cause one of these sides to budge. But it is a good show of good faith and goodwill from Brandon Aiyuk to say this publicly. And that's all you can really read into it from this point. And it is all part of the negotiating arc that we are currently watching. This is happening, or has happened tonight. A little bit earlier, I was live and the audio really wasn't working. I shared this picture with you. How will the peach pie turn out? Well, we've got a couple pictures of the production of the peach pie. Maybe I should have shown this one first. We ate the peach pie. It was really good. It had vanilla ice cream as well. This was before the oven. I currently don't have the photo of the after it had heated up to 400 degrees, but that's going to be on tomorrow's show. So stay tuned to find out what the peach pie looked like. Spoiler alert, it was awesome. So we're going to the 49ers Q&A at this point. If you have any questions about this from Brandon Aiyuk, I will be happy to answer them. Thank you to Mel. Appreciate you. Super sticker. Really good stuff. And I'm ready to answer the questions. Let's go. Go for Baroque's biggest concern is that whenever these players hold out until the end of training camp, they're not as productive during the season. I think that's the 49ers' biggest concern as well in this situation. They still have Brandon Aiyuk under contract, and I don't think anybody believes that he won't play in this 2024 season if the 49ers play hardball. That's not the preferred path of anybody involved, but that's just the leverage that the 49ers hold. But even if you do exercise that kind of nuclear option, and Brandon Aiyuk doesn't show up for training camp, then he misses camp. And yes, his performance can be negatively impacted by that. I think it was, Nick Bosa, he missed out on reps against Trent Williams. Bosa rarely gets to go against a player of his caliber, right? That's extremely rare during the regular season. So picking on somebody your own size, so to speak, Bosa gets to do that during training camp. Because Trent Williams is a future Hall of Famer. That's somebody that's at the same caliber of tackle as Nick Bosa is defensive end. So the fact that Nick Bosa did not get to go against Trent Williams last training camp meant that Nick Bosa didn't get to sharpen his sword the same way that he typically does during training camp. Aiyuk not being able to go against Charvarius Ward during this training camp if he doesn't show up to training camp and this isn't resolved and the holdout continues until then. If that matchup doesn't come to fruition, that probably hurts Brandon Aiyuk because he's not able to sharpen his sword in the way that you want to do during training camp. So yes, and then there's the whole team camaraderie aspect. And most of that stuff, a lot of the rust and all that can be ironed out over the course of the first few weeks of the regular season. I think it was with Nick Bosa last year. But sometimes every single loss is something that could prevent you from reaching the Super Bowl later on when you're talking about first round buys, division titles, all that stuff. So I think the 49ers in a season where they're under a true pressure cooker. They're trying to push all the chips into the middle of the table. They're trying to win now. You want Brandon Aiyuk there from day one of training camp. You want him working with the guys. You want him sharpening his skill set from day one, so that way he's ready to hit the ground running in week one against the New York Jets. Yes, Bosa warmed up during the season last year, but the season counts. So if you're still warming up and if you're not at peak performance and a loss happens because of that, well, then the holdout has officially hurt your football team. See, this I'm not so sure about. It's a fair point from Mike. He says the Aiyuk missing OTAs might have already made him a little bit rusty. I think that on the aggregate, even if there is a tiny bit of rust from him missing OTAs, he'll definitely be able to shake it off by showing up to training camp. And I think on the aggregate, the 49ers might even benefit from Brandon Aiyuk not being at OTAs. Why? Because younger guys get more reps. So OTAs, those are about Ricky Pearsall. They're about Jacob Cowing. Those guys get their reps at OTAs because they're not going to have as big of a shot to get reps later on if Aiyuk is at training camp or a practice during the regular season. And if you're talking about this being the luxury depth year for Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing, well, you want to give them the crash course as quickly as possible before that season starts, because if they are and end up being only luxury depth this season, they're not going to be ultimate featured weapons in this offense. And I think that's the goal. That's the ramp up period, right, for Ricky Pearsall. You have him working behind Deebo Samuel, Brandon Aiyuk, Jawan Jennings this season, filling in where he needs to fill in. Role probably increases over the season as he truly gets comfortable. Guys do get hurt. I mean, I don't think the 49ers anticipate a catastrophic injury, but you have to be ready for one. And even if there's not a catastrophic injury, guys might be in and out of the lineup to the point where that's going to help Ricky Pearsall get some early playing time. But OTAs will get him ready for that early playing time. I think he benefits a whole lot more from OTA reps than somebody like Brandon Aiyuk. That being said, once you get to training camp, you definitely want all your guys there. Go for broke. Still believes the 49ers will be the Super Bowl favorites this season and the next season. Well, they're the favorites this season. They're favored in every single one of their games this season. So, and they're also favored to win the whole thing in the futures bet category. So, if can they keep that up into 2025? We'll find out. But I think the first thing to pay attention to is, will the 49ers actually win the Super Bowl in 2024? Technically 2025, but it's the 2024 season. It is impressive that they're favored in every single one of their games entering the season. Any intel on the new defensive coordinator and how he's going to run the defensive scheme? 4-3-3-4. Is he aggressive with the blitz package? Well, they're still going to run the 4-3 primarily. Four-man front, aggressive attacking front. They're not going to bring a Vic Fangio front in as far as how the defensive linemen are going to play technique-wise. The 49ers have Nick Sorensen, who's already been in the building. He comes from the Dan Quinn, Pete Carroll, Seattle 4-3, cover 3 coaching tree. So they're going to go back to the basics. Where Brandon Staley is going to come in is some of the quarters coverage, some of the mix-ups on the back end. I think that you're going to see more variety in that way, but they're staying true to their attacking four-man front. I do know that the Saleh-style defenses, I'm talking about Robert Saleh coming out of Seattle, did not blitz all too much. Now, the 49ers blitz rate did go up over time. One of the reasons they didn't blitz very much in Saleh's early years especially 2019 when he had all that talent at his disposals because they didn't need to. They had D Ford and Nick Bosa coming off the edge. They had Eric Armstead and DJ Jones and DeForest Buckner at those tackle positions. So you didn't really need to bring more than four. I did notice that as the 49ers started to see lessening of talent up front, and 2021 was the best example, DeMeco Ryans turned up the blitz rate. They blitzed more to make up for some of the loss of pressure. So what will they do in 2024 under Nick Sorensen, not DeMeco Ryans, not Steve Wilkes anymore? It's anybody's guess. But if you look on paper at this defensive line, pass rushing wise, it looks like it can be really good, especially with Leonard Floyd, somebody who has 39 and a half sacks over the past 4 years on the bookending spot opposite Nick Bosa. Javon Hargrave, really good pass rusher. Bosa, obviously all world. Inside, I think you're better pass rushing than you are run stopping. And maybe they're going to find their big nose tackle type that can stop the run. I think that's actually really important for the 49ers. We can talk about Clea Davis. We could talk about Evan Anderson. We could talk about Shaquille Brown. Those guys are all candidates for that job. But if we're just looking at this exclusively from a pass rushing lens, they've got four, but more than four. But they're going to have four really solid players up front, and they'll probably have two or three different combinations of four that can get the job done. Yetur Gross-Matos moving inside. That's going to be like an Amenahu-like setup. They really think that he's got good, quick hands against guards on the inside. So look out for that. He's the pickup from Carolina. They've got Jordan Elliott, who they think is going to be able to back guards up. They think he's really strong. They like that. Again, they still need that nose tackle type against the run, and that sets up the pass rush. I know it's all connected, but from the pure pass rushing skill set, that toolbox between Bosa, Hargrave, Leonard Floyd, and then whoever else you want to plug in as that fourth, even Yetur Gross-Matos, he might be that guy in an ASCAR package. The 49ers think they can generate pressure with four, which leads me to believe that Sorensen, since he's more of the old school Seattle style type guy, with the 49ers making a concerted effort to move this back into the old way of running things, I don't think they're going to be blitzing all too much. But I do know it's going to be an attacking four-man front, and I do think that Brandon Staley's bigger impact is going to be on the defensive backfield with the secondary, with some of the versatility and some of the different coverages that he employs there. Gopher Baroque is talking about my cap theory, or it's his own cap theory, but I feel that we have the same one because great minds think alike. But he said when it comes to the cap, the 49ers will more than likely keep some extra cap space if they sign Brandon Aiyuk, because they'll probably free up some cap this year, which is almost certainly true. Then they'll carry over some cap space the next season. Yes. So this is what I wrote, because the Christian McCaffrey deal allowed the 49ers to save some room this year. The Juwan Jennings deal allowed them to save some room this year. Brandon Ayuk's cap hit's currently what Christian McCaffrey's cap hit used to be at about $14 million. So you could lessen it to about, say, $8 million. That saves up $6 more. The 49ers currently have $32.7 million in offseason space. Add $6 million to that. That would mean about $38.7 million. Guess how much they were set to carry over at the beginning of last season? $39 million. So the 49ers will be at $38.7 million. You can see what they're doing here. They're trying to repeat history. The financial management works because the salary cap is increasing. So push money into the future as far as cap hits go. Players are happy now because they get their guaranteed money. Cap hit pro rates over 5 years. I have that for you right here. This is the Christian McCaffrey deal. Look at the proration. They even set it up so it could prorate further to 2030. Accordion style structure. All the option bonuses and signing bonuses, they're shaded in color here. They're all pushed back so that the cap hit is only 6.7 and 9.8 early before balloons later. But that's okay because the cap is increasing year after year, and you're not penalized for moving the money into the future. Somebody tried to call it a mortgage earlier. They said, I would never pay my mortgage that way. And it's like, well, I don't think that your mortgage is a zero interest mortgage. Of course you wouldn't want to do that. You want to cut it down as it comes. You don't want to push it back because it's going to balloon with interest. This, though, is not ballooning with interest. $2.1 million against the cap in 2030. If you have it scheduled for them, still going to cost 2.1 million when you pay it. It's not going to be 2.1 million plus interest. So that's how the 49ers are surfing the wave. And yes, I would expect them to push salary cap space, the unused space, forward into the future, because it does carry over from year to year. And then the follow-up question here is, will the salary cap increase next year as much as it did this year? He's thinking not as much. Well, we'll see. It increased $30 million. It's tied the revenue. Some of these streaming deals are still kicking in, right? So we're going to have games on new streaming channels this year. That's more revenue from the NFL. If this whole Taylor Swift effect continues to pour money into the league from fans who weren't previously as interested in the NFL, that's another source of the salary cap moving up. So it's grown naturally year after year, but we've seen like $10 to $15 million increases. The $30 million increase, that was new. There is an exponential factor, it seems, to some of this. Also, the international games and the whole international footprint, that's growing rapidly every single season. So I don't think the NFL's gotten anything anywhere close to the limit of how much it can make. I think that they are still in rapid growth mode, which is good news for teams like the 49ers. The 49ers have 6 primetime games, yes. Although that doesn't change the salary cap equation. It's a big pot, right? The league revenue is a big pot, TV deal, money, everything. The bigger the pot, the higher the salary cap is going to be, because it's going to be based on a percentage of that revenue pot. All right, I'm ready for some more questions here as we talk about Brandon Aiyuk. Speaking of that, we can also show you the Jawan Jennings contract. When we talk about pushing money into the future, I know McCaffrey's had 3 bonuses. Jennings has 2 because he only has 2 years, so you can only have 2 bonuses kick in. Only 1 bonus per year can be prorated. You can't give out 2 that are prorated per year. So Jennings gets 1 in year 1, another one kicks in year 2, and it stretches out over 5 years beyond that. Who's my favorite rookie? It's a good question. I've got stuff coming out on Dominic Pooney and Renardo Green and Tatum Bethune soon, the 2 Florida State guys. I don't have a favorite. I'm just sitting here watching them play and practice. I think that fans are really going to like Renardo Green's style. I mean, just a bulldog out there on the field. Somebody like Malik Mustafa, to me, he seems really polished and ready to go. Malik reminds me the most of Jair Brown, who was able to play right away. Notched a big Super Bowl interception in the Super Bowl. Somebody who's really presidential, body looks ready to go for the NFL level, but just carries himself with the kind of maturity that you're like, okay, this guy could start making defensive calls at this point. Not like they're going to thrust him into that position, but it does seem like Malik Mustafa might be ready for the bright lights for the 49ers. Gopher Broke wonders if Pooney's going to get some time at center. I don't think so. I haven't seen that yet. He got some time during his spring game in college when the first 2 centers, the first 2 strings were hurt, and he did a good job filling in at Kansas. And he also played center at the Senior Bowl. But that would be a big step for a rookie who I think they're really preparing to compete at guard. That'd be a big load to add to his plate. So I wouldn't see that immediately, but they do believe he has 5 position versatility. And maybe down the road, we do see that from Dominic Pooney. What is the Purdy number next year? For what? For passing yards? Let's open up Brock Purdy's Pro Football Reference page. Let's see. We could look at this statistically. And this is a wide page. I'm going to take a screenshot so we could have this in a more readable format for everybody. All right, here we go. I hope this is readable. I'll take my face off of that. All right, so the Purdy number next year, 4,280 yards is the 49ers passing record this past season, I think it's fair to wonder if he can approach 5,000. Breaking 5,000 might be a bit aggressive, but he is passing more these days than he was for the majority of the season. 4,500 might be a fair question to ask. 31 touchdowns against 11 interceptions last year. The interception rate, right, it stayed constant, 2.4%, 2.5%. That's essentially the same. I wonder if he can cut that down here now that he finally has a full off season, getting to know the system. It's obviously going to take some counter adjustments against opposing defenses, but I really do wonder if Brock Purdy can cut down that interception rate under 2%. I think that's what the 49ers would love it to be, somewhere around 1.7%, which would be more like 6 or 7 interceptions on the season. Now that would be a really, really good number, right? That's maybe 8 interceptions would do it. That is a lot to ask for, but the interception rate is still slightly high for Brock Purdy. I think to be ultra efficient, to get the most juice out of this orange, you want that interception rate to be a bit lower. That being said, the adjusted yards per attempt, which includes interceptions, the adjusted net yards per attempt, all these numbers historic, elite, borderline top in history for some of these numbers. Yards per attempt, not quiet, but almost there. It's on the leaderboard. 9.6, adjusted net yards per attempt over 9. That was awesome. So these numbers for Brock Purdy are really damn impressive. Notice the sack percentage went down slightly from 6.1% to 5.9% in 2023. What's the feeling around Moody? I think they're really optimistic about Moody. I mean, yes, he got an extra point blocked in that Super Bowl, but he also kicked 2 field goals successfully of over 50 yards in the Super Bowl as a rookie. I think it's really, really hard to argue that Robbie Gould would have made 2 from over 50 in the Super Bowl, given how the 49ers had started to use Gould from only shorter distances toward the end of his career. So you missed out on a point with the extra point, but you also picked up, I would say, at least +3 over the average kicker because he made 2. I would say that the average NFL kicker, you could probably count on to make 1 out of those 2 in the Super Bowl. But Moody made both of those. So there they are. They're +3 in that regard. So you lose the point on extra point, still +2. You made it to overtime if you were the 49ers, thanks to Jake Moody. You needed all those points as they came. So he was still a net positive for the 49ers in the Super Bowl. I thought he got better as the year went along. He's got some time away now. I think that was really important to just reflect on the growth of the rookie season. The miss against Cleveland, obviously, that one hurt, but it didn't hurt the 49ers in the long run. It's all stuff that Jake Moody needs to process, recalibrate, be ready to go here for year 2, where they're probably going to count on him to kick the ball very creatively on those kickoffs. It's going to be really important to directionally kick under these new kickoff rules. So there's going to be a lot on Jake Moody's plate here in year 2. I'm still looking through some questions here. Rick Allen says that Purdy's pass yards depends on how well the run game goes. Yes, but that's a two-sided equation, right? The run game could be so good that they don't throw a lot. But you also need the run game to be effective so that it sets up passing opportunities. So a good run game, I think, is necessary for a lot of pass yards. But that run game can't be so dominant that it just runs over every single crowded box to the point you don't even need to throw. I think you just need a solid run game, and I think that's what people expect out of the 49ers, a solid to good run game, top 10 run game, maybe top 5 like it was last year. And that sets Brock Purdy up to really dominate off play action with his arm. Mike's joke here. This is a reference to Justin Tucker, who said that he added 3.8 pounds to be able to better cover kicks under the new rules. So Mike Ortaza says that Moody needs to add 3.78 pounds, right around that Justin Tucker weight. That'd be good. Mike is plugged into the current football references of the day. You got to love it. We have a lot of people saying they'd rather see Wisnowski kick off. And, I think that's a decent point because Mitch is, he's tackled before. We remember his rookie year. I think it was against Kansas City, 2019. Was it 2019? Might have been. Or was he not drafted until 2020? It was early on where he just laid somebody out. And you're like, okay, Australian. There he goes. This guy, this is not your typical kicker. This guy is not afraid to deliver some contact. And maybe that makes Mitch Wisnowski the better option at kicker. I think that directional kicking is going to be tremendously important, though. So whoever's better at that off of the tee, whoever's able to better set up the other 10 coverage guys, that's probably who the 49ers will use. Now, it will be really nice to have that 11th player be able to be a tackler. But even if you do use Mitch Wisnowski for that reason, you don't want him making the tackles. You don't want to go back to 2021, the regular season finale of that season, where Mitch Wisnowski suffered a concussion and Robbie Gould had a punt and Kyle Juszczyk had a hold. That gets dicey, right? Those are hairy situations. You don't want to get into that. So I don't think that you want Mitch Wisnowski leading the charge on any tackles. You want him as the last resort guy. And if you find it to be valuable enough to have his tackling skills out there as the last resort, so be it. But it's going to have to outweigh the directional kicking that Jake Moody might be able to provide. It's going to be a hell of a training camp for running backs this summer, says Go for Broke. Yes, it will. I mean, you could see it here. McCaffrey, Mitchell, Patrick Taylor Jr., Isaac Guerendo, Jordan Mason, Cody Schrader. Schrader already impressing after OTAs. I haven't moved him up the depth chart yet because there's not a lot of movement to make during OTAs. But perhaps over the course of the training camp that the 49ers will undergo here in a month or two, Cody Schrader will be able to make his case for the 53-man roster. Isaac Guerendo, Schrader is more polished than Guerendo. Schrader started a ton of college games at the SEC level. Guerendo, meanwhile, started one college game, but he's got the athleticism in his corner. So he's going to have to develop, but that's going to be awesome to see. Compare and contrast two totally different styles. Schrader, Guerendo, Mason, the closer, Elijah Mitchell, your number 2, Patrick Taylor, tall back. I mean, really, really tall back. 6'2", bordering on 6'3". This is going to be a lot of good stuff to watch in training camp. I've gone through this player by player, position by position, and it's all, I mean, you look at every position and you're like, wow, there's going to be something to watch at every minute of this training camp. It should be really cool to see. I don't know how this NFL lawsuit, I know it has to do with Sunday tickets, going to affect the salary cap. I really don't know. It depends on who wins the lawsuit, how much it's settled for, whatever happens. I haven't read too far into it. If it's a massive amount of money, then obviously that theoretically could cut into revenues, right? So at that point, it would lessen the salary cap. The salary cap is just tied to league revenue. So we just have to go with that and see how league revenue is affected. Yeah, this is what I heard too, that the hip drop tackles will be fined more often than penalized in games. And maybe penalization will be something that happens to a greater degree as the years progress. Dan Nelson says the 49ers and Rams will battle this season. That's right. First time's down at SoFi on September 22nd. You want the 49ers to dominate through the run game again like 2019? Well, they really peaked late in that season with the run game. I know everybody remembers the Packers game. I think you just need to be balanced in the modern NFL. There's nothing. I mean, you can always, unless you're the Packers from the 2019 season, you could always bring more guys up into the box and stop the run. They embarrassed that Green Bay team because Green Bay tried and they still ran on them. So fine. That was an outlier. That game, that's like the Justin Jefferson contract. We can't use that game to gauge what the truth is going to be moving forward. But what you can do if you're a balanced offense is sucker teams into the box with your run game and then beat them over the top with your pass game and then loosen them up to defend the pass game and then carve them up underneath with the run game. And you just go back and forth and you could keep them on their heels and not on their toes, which is why Kyle Shanahan preaches balance all the time. That's what the 49ers need to do. Now, of course, you would want a dominant run game to pair with an MVP caliber quarterback. And I think that's why the 49ers are the number one offense in football last year, because they were good at both. That's what you want to maintain moving forward here into 2024. What do I feel will be the best home game to attend? What does everybody feel will be the best home game to attend? I'm going to put the 49ers home schedule up here for you, but put this in the comment section. What do you think the best home game to attend will be? The schedule on their website is just too, maybe we have the schedule on our website here up on the Athletic. I think this one might be easier to put up on the screen and read. But whatever your favorite home game is going to be, go ahead and put it up on the screen. I actually can't get any of these open. Here, we could look at it this way. 49ers home opponents, 49ers road opponents. The home opponents are here at the top. The Cardinals, no. The Rams, maybe. Niners-Rams is always fun. The Seahawks, maybe. That rivalry doesn't move the needle for me the way that it used to, though. Seattle just hasn't been good enough for that. Chicago Bears, Caleb Williams coming to Levi's. Exciting. The Lions, okay, well, that's an obvious one. NFC Championship rematch on December 30th. The Jets, Aaron Rodgers, Robert Saleh in the opener. That's really damn good. New England, they're not projected to be good this year. Kansas City's coming in. Dallas is coming in. Oh, my goodness. That's a good home schedule if you're looking for entertainment value. So, I mean, the Cowboys are always in contention for the best home game just because it's the Cowboys and there's a rivalry. Kansas City's the Super Bowl rematch. You've got a Super Bowl rematch and an NFC Championship game rematch. You have Aaron Rodgers, Robert Saleh, and the Jets. Too bad this is not a couple years ago, because it'd be a few years ago at this point. It'd be Tom Brady and the Patriots. You've got the Bears and the number one overall pick, and then you've got a couple really good divisional matchups. I wouldn't even, write off the Cardinals too quickly yet. They can upset people if Kyler Murray has a big game. He was starting to play okay toward the end of the last season. That's a damn good home schedule. What's everybody's favorite game? Put it in the comment section. Seriously. Out of those, Michael Otis says Chiefs game, and I don't think it's close. We have a lot of people saying Chiefs game. We have a 14-3 prediction. We have people saying the Cowboys game. We have Jim Everett, the resident Rams fan, who may be displaying slightly more trolling behavior today, more on the trolling spectrum. He's saying Rams, Niners at SoFi in the NFC Championship game. Book it. Well, let's book it. 43 minutes into this video on June 10th. If this ends up happening, we'll bring back this clip. We'll remember when Jim Everett predicted the 49ers and the Rams would be at the NFC title game in SoFi. Mike is picking Niners against the Chiefs as his favorite home game for San Francisco. The 49ers are at 30.4 passes to 28.1 runs in 2023. You could see them moving to a 35-25 ratio in 2024. They were close to 35-25 in the postseason. They were much further along passing wise than running wise. And if you believe in Brock Purdy and you've got all these targets as they do, and the pass protection gets a little bit better, as I think the 49ers believe they can attain this year, then yeah, I don't see why that ratio wouldn't head in that direction. Jim Everett keeps on wanting to meet on Mooney Boulevard in Visalia. Too bad that I'm thousands of miles away from Visalia right now, but at some point I'll make it. At some point it will happen. Who would be interested in like subscriber meetups, viewer meetups? That'd be fun. Like a big happy hour. Could be cool. I need some ideas though. Some crowdsourced ideas could be fun. All right, we're 45 minutes into this thing. It's time for me to go lay down, go to bed. It's already 11:20 out here. So everybody, thanks for watching. Credit to Brad for that nice Brandon Aiyuk update. Make sure that you watch the video from the very start if you haven't. This is from Brad Graham. He noticed this. He got the confirmation via Aiyuk Daily. My home is here. My family is here. Everything I know is here. I want to be a 49er beyond this season. See you guys.